Pardon monsieur, les enchères sont déjà...
Certes. Mais je trouve que cette vente traîne un petit peu. Gagnons du temps, j'en chierai à 60 millions d'euros.
60, j'ai bien entendu 60 millions d'euros, monsieur?
C'est bien ça.
Non. Donc 60 millions d'euros, monsieur. Une fois, 60 millions d'euros. Deux fois, 60 millions d'euros. Trois fois, adjugé.
Present-day Paris, Hassan Diop, disguised as Louis Perena, convinces a group of loan sharks to help him steal the Queen's necklace. The necklace, once owned by Marie Antoinette, is now owned by the Pellegrinis, and being auctioned off at the Louvre. Hassan then poses as Paul Cernin, a wealthy business-owning gentleman, and wins the auction. And though the loan sharks double-cross him, he ultimately leaves with the real necklace. Through flashbacks, we learn that Hassan's father, Babacar Diop, was the Pellegrinis' chauffeur, and that both Babacar and Hassan spent time at the Pellegrinis' home 25 years ago. On friendly terms, Anne Pellegrini, Hubert Pellegrini's wife, let Babacar choose a book from the library, and he chose Arsène Lupin, gentleman burglar, to give to his son. Meanwhile, Hassan befriended Juliette, the Pellegrinis' teenage daughter. Babacar was later arrested for stealing the Queen's necklace, and he hanged himself in prison. Hassan steals the Queen's necklace back in revenge for the loss of his father, and he passes down the book from his father to his own son, Raoul. Youssef Gadira, junior police detective, finds connections between the case of the stolen necklace and Arsène Lupin stories, and eventually discovers that Paul Cernin is an anagram for Arsène Lupin. Benjamin Farrell, Hassan's best friend and an antiquarian, examines the necklace and informs Hassan that the jewels were never removed from the necklace, suggesting the Pellegrinis lied about its history and possibly lied about it being stolen by Babacar in the first place. Hassan confronts Juliette about this, and she confirms that the history was fabricated to generate more interest in the necklace, but she affirms her belief that Babacar is guilty because he signed a confession. Unhappy and conflicted, Hassan goes home, and rereads the letter his father left for him, before committing suicide. In it, Hassan finds clues he missed before. He needs to visit Etienne Comé, a man his father knew in prison. Hassan cons himself into the prison Comé is being held in, and is eventually led to a copy of the Confessions of Arsène Lupin. The book has annotations from his father that spell out, "I am innocent," framed by Anne Pellegrini. After breaking himself right back out of prison, Hassan confronts Anne Pellegrini, who admits that she did convince Babacar to sign the confession, and that she had been pressured to by Inspector Gabriel Dumont. Hassan recognizes Dumont as the man who collected him and turned him into social services, after his father's suicide. Meanwhile, Youssef Gadira continues to investigate the connection between the Queen's necklace and Arsène Lupin. The necklace returned to the Louvre turned out to be fake, and the loan sharks who were arrested for stealing it listed another accomplice, Louis Perena, another anagram for Arsène Lupin. Gadira wants to go to Captain Romain Laguerre with his findings, but Lieutenant Sofia Belkacem discourages and dismisses him. To get more information about the framing of his father, Hassan kidnaps now Commissioner Gabriel Dumont from City Hall. Through flashbacks, we learn that Dumont suspected Hubert Pellegrini of insurance fraud and framing Babacar 25 years ago. Pellegrini threatened Dumont's wife and convinced Dumont to help him, telling him to use his wife's softness for Babacar to make her convince Babacar to sign a false confession. After hours of interrogation, Hassan demands, "Tell me why you framed my dad," and gives himself away as Babacar's son. That is all he gives away. The interrogation ends with Hassan saying he wants to believe people, including Dumont, can change, that he forgives Dumont. He leaves the building just before the police rush in. Gadira convinces Laguerre and Belkacem that Dumont is being held right in City Hall, based on old Arsène Lupin stories. After Dumont is rescued and gives nothing away about his kidnapper, Gadira discovers Dumont's involvement with the original necklace investigation. When Hassan ambushes Dumont in a public cafe, looking for information about Pellegrini, Dumont suggests he contact Fabien Berriot, a former journalist whose life Pellegrini ruined after she wrote a book exposing his corruption. Berriot, wanting revenge, agrees to work with Hassan. They acquire a video with proof of Pellegrini dealing firearms to the Malaysians, which eventually led to the Malaysians blowing up the French embassy in Kuala Lumpur and killing 11 people. As Salvatore, Hassan shares a screenshot of the video on Twitter and threatens to release the entire video. Pellegrini denies the accusations publicly and sends his henchman, Leonard Kone, after Berriot. With no admission from Pellegrini, Hassan does a TV interview disguised as Salvatore. But Pellegrini is friends with the show's host and has the video altered, so there is no incriminating evidence when it airs. Juliette sees the interview and is convinced of her father's innocence. She calls to tell him that Hassan Diop, Babacar's son, is behind these accusations and is the one who stole the necklace. Later, when Hassan goes to see Berriot to regroup and plan next steps, he finds her dead. Hassan and Benjamin discuss what Hassan should do. After Berriot's murder, he is considering giving up, but Benjamin reminds Hassan that if he doesn't live his life, Pellegrini is already winning. For Raoul's birthday, Hassan takes him and Claire away by train to celebrate at an Arsène Lupin festival. During the journey, Hassan slips away to deal with Kone, who has followed them onto the train. He manages to win the fight and convince the police to arrest Kone. When they arrive at their destination, suggesting Kone is Paul Cernin. When Hassan catches up with Raoul and Claire, they walk the promenade together. Many people are dressed as Arsène Lupin as part of the celebrations, and Raoul goes off on his own to explore the beach. Claire asks Hassan about Kone, but he only gives her vague answers. Meanwhile, Kone is quickly released from police custody, and he kidnaps Raoul. While Hassan and Claire are frantically looking for Raoul, Gadira, who has continued making his Arsène Lupin connections, appears on the beach and calls out to Hassan. Lupin? Gadira asks if Hassan is looking for someone dressed as Lupin, then tells Hassan and Claire he saw Raoul get taken by Kone. Hassan hotwires a car, and, knowing Hassan is the man he has been looking for, Gadira offers to go with Hassan to help get Raoul back. In a small town, they briefly get out of the car to ask around, and Gadira manages to call Belkacem for backup. Hassan and Gadira then chase Kone to an abandoned county house. It's dark when they arrive, and Hassan tells Gadira that he knows Gadira is a cop, and has called for backup. Gadira tells Hassan that they have an hour before the police arrive. Though they get along and have shared appreciation for the Arsène Lupin stories, Hassan ties Gadira to the seat of the car and goes to face off with Kone alone. Hassan and Kone fight in the darkened house, which leads to Hassan tossing Kone out a window, shotgun in hand. Assuming Raoul is still in the house, Hassan rushes to find him. However, Kone had already moved Raoul back to the trunk of the car, and, now on the ground and wounded, he douses the car in gasoline and lights it on fire. Realizing what has happened, Hassan races outside as the car explodes. He falls to his knees, devastated. Belkacem finds him that way and arrests him. Fortunately, as Hassan was looking for Raoul in the house, Gadira broke free from his restraints and saved Raoul from the burning car. They ran away from the scene, chased by Kone, and escaped by car. As Hassan is being driven back to Paris in the back of a police car, he learns that Raoul got away. Relieved, he manages to escape from the police and drive himself back to Paris to find his son. Gadira meanwhile delivers Raoul to the Park Hyatt Hotel on Dumont's orders. Pellegrini and Juliette are there to host a fundraiser. Pellegrini tells Dumont that they will use Raoul as bait and arrest Hassan, and it will be good for Dumont's career to catch the most wanted man in France. Dumont agrees to the plan. Hassan arrives to save Raoul. He uses voice-altering technology to call Dumont and pretend to be Pellegrini, demanding Raoul be escorted out of the building and into a black van, where he will then be taken farther away for safety. The ruse works, and Hassan drives away with Raoul. Some of Pellegrini's men are waiting at Claire's when Hassan takes Raoul home. Claire intercepts Hassan and Raoul in the hallway, and just manages to warn Hassan away, saving him from the trap she helped Pellegrini set up. Claire tells Raoul she doesn't want him seeing Hassan anymore. He's dangerous, and can't be trusted. Hassan and Benjamin meet to discuss the plan to take down Hubert, and Hassan tells how he will seduce Juliette, prove to her that he'll do anything for her, and use that confidence to take his advantage. The plan works, and he convinces Juliet to speak to her mother, Anne, about her father's crimes, so that her father no longer holds sway over their relationship. Juliet does speak to Anne, and Anne reveals the truth about Pellegrini. Juliet encourages Anne to go to the police, and Anne goes to meet with Gadira. After learning the truth, Gadira and Captain Laguerre arrest Pellegrini in front of his new stockbroker and money laundering accomplice, Philippe Courbet. Hassan intends to stand up Juliet at the bridge where she stood him up over 20 years ago, but he ends up meeting with her, and they kiss. Laguerre and Belkacem don't get any information out of Pellegrini before strings are pulled and Pellegrini is released. Pellegrini has Koné follow Hassan and attempt to kill him, but before he can do more than get into Hassan's living room, Pellegrini's other henchman, Pascal Oblé, murders Koné. Oblé leaves Koné's body in Hassan's living room, calls the police to give an anonymous tip, and leaves, framing Hassan for Koné's murder. Hassan and Benjamin go on the run, leaving a trail for the police to follow. While on the run, Hassan leaves a coded message for Gadira to find, which eventually leads Gadira to a USB full of evidence about Pellegrini, Dumont, and their corruption and cover-ups. Meanwhile, Pellegrini, Dumont, Courbet, and Oblé meet. Dumont tells Pellegrini that all incriminating evidence is ready to be destroyed, and that the charges against Pellegrini have been dropped. Through flashbacks, we learn that Courbet was planted in Pellegrini's inner circle by Hassan and Benjamin a few weeks prior, and on the night of the concert, Courbet helps Hassan and Benjamin sneak into the venue, and set up the app and computers to transfer all the donations made during the event. Evidence is found that suggests Hassan was not the one to kill Koné, but Hassan is still wanted for thievery. Gadira shows Belkacem and Laguerre the evidence of Dumont admitting to taking bribes and working with Pellegrini, and the three of them decide to arrest Dumont at the concert that night. At the start of the concert, Juliet appeals to the crowd to donate to the foundation, using the app, and as soon as the concert starts, donations start pouring in. During the concert, Hassan sneaks into Pellegrini's balcony and questions him about Berriot's death, Raoul's kidnapping, his father framing and death, his own framing, Pellegrini's connection to Koné's death and Koné's real killer. Pellegrini admits to everything, and Hassan leaves. Toward the end of the concert, Dumont corners Hassan and threatens to shoot him, but Laguerre, Belkacem, and Gadira arrest Dumont instead, and as Hassan heads to the stage, he sends Gadira a recording of his conversation with Pellegrini, which also leads to Pellegrini's arrest. Hassan escapes by using a disguise, and he ends up on a speedboat on the river, only stopping to say goodbye to Claire and Raoul before disappearing into the streets of Paris.